Hi, I'm James. I work for a company called Cysium, a cyber security company. I work in the commercial function, so most of my time is spent arranging contracts with clients and suppliers and stuff. So I wanted to make best use of this time in lockdown to learn a little bit more about the technical side of what our company does. A colleague mentioned that it might be a good idea to broadcast this conversation because it might be of interest to others. So here we are. I hope you enjoy the recordings and find them useful. And they're quite informal conversations, as you'll realise. And in some places, the video and the audio is not great. But we've done our best. I hope you find them of use. There's some details about our company at the end if you want to come and check us out and learn a little bit more. Thanks. I hope you enjoy the series. Cheers. Okay, so for this video, I'm here with Tom, one of our senior consultants. And this is the first session. So we're going to talk this time about cyber threats and impacts, who, what, and why. I'd like to talk to you a little bit today, Tom, about who is doing this, what they're up to, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. What are their motivations? So, we as a company have tried to identify this. I don't know whether where do you want to start? Where do you want to start?
Should we start on categorizing the threats?
Yeah. Okay. So these are the threat actors, yeah?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's sort of a main list that people fall into. So at if we start at the bottom of the list, we've got something called script kiddies. Script kiddies are people who low skill, using tools online, and normally are hacking probably either for fun or they're just trying to show off or anything. As we saw the TalkTalk hack a few years ago, where a kid tested a SQL injection against TalkTalk and allowed him to get access to data. He didn't actually get done for it that much, but that was for fun, not destructive. He had no malicious purpose behind it. You've then got hacktivists. Hacktivists are people who have a certain idea. So they could be, I don't know, working for a terrorist organization, or they could be, for instance, hacking pharmaceutical companies because they don't believe in their views.
Oh, out of principle.
Mostly out of principle, yes. So these guys, that if they're going to attack a pharmaceutical company, they're doing it for their principle, so they're probably a lot more motivated. Whereas a script kiddie might see something, can't get in, might move on to a new target. A hacktivist has a single goal, and they range from skills. You've then got sort of organized crime groups. Organized crime groups are financial. Mostly the biggest thing we see at the moment is ransomware, where there's a financial side to life.
Okay, so they're after the money, these guys.
Yeah, precisely. So ransomware is the biggest one that people are going for at the moment, and stealing sensitive intellectual property as well. We've then got the fun one, nation states, the one that everyone loves talking about and the one that everyone loves saying they could defend against and all this. If a organized and well-funded nation state targets you, probably not much you can do to stop them. And it's probably not where you want to be setting your bar for security, because the risks you would have to take go down and down and down. You wouldn't really be having a usable IT network if you're trying to defend against those kind of guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then.
So these. Okay. Can we go back to the kind of lowest level of capability? These script kiddies. Are they writing this code? You mentioned SQL injection. Are they writing this stuff? Are they sitting in their bedrooms coding stuff? What are they doing?
So sometimes, yes, there are some very skilled individuals who will go off and write code who kind of don't fall really into the script key category. But in this case, he used something called SQL Map. SQL Map is a tool that was developed for testing SQL injections, and he tested it against TalkTalk and it worked. Now, whether that's a bad thing against him because he used it and it worked, which he shouldn't have, absolutely, and he was very much punished for doing his actions. But TalkTalk were vulnerable to this. If he could do it, at his age and his skill level, someone with skill could have done a lot more.
So what did he do? Where did he get this script from?
So a lot of these tools are freely available on GitHub, or they come free in a piece of software called Kali Linux, which is an operating system specifically designed and tailored for hacking.
Right. Okay. So you can buy software that comes with the tools that will enable you to hack into somebody's website.
Not even buy. It's open source, meaning it's free to download and free for anyone to use and modify under certain constraints. So it's freely available online and anyone can download it.
And is this stuff relatively easy to use, or do you need to have background knowledge in hacking or in?
So some of the tools, yes. Some of the more advanced stuff you have to do. You probably have to have an understanding, but there's plenty of videos online. Like myself, I started on Wi-Fi hacking in 2012, and that was literally just going on YouTube, typing in how to hack Wi-Fi. It put me onto Backtrack, which was an old version of Kali, and then within a week, I was able to hack Wi-Fi just from watching YouTube videos.
And by hack Wi-Fi, you mean get into somebody's Wi-Fi router and look at the traffic and what, get into their...
Yeah, essentially you are in their home at this point. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And that's pretty much available online to anybody, and you don't have to be a kind of genius hacker to be able to use this sort of stuff.
Precisely, yeah. There's plenty of documentation online about how to use these tools and how to hack. Probably about 90% of the things I've learned have been from the internet and people's blogs and people posting about things rather than commercial courses.
Yeah, it's kind of a community, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah.
You know, is it a social community? Will people know each other? You know, will they be able to spot the signs of script kiddies and who's doing this stuff? But you know, will they leave an obvious trail which might identify them?
So there is the side of the IRC channels and all these darknet hacking forums and everything that everyone hears about. Essentially, it's just a place where everyone goes and they'll share skill. Sometimes not very good, sometimes very good capabilities. That's when it sort of comes into the organized crime groups type area as well. Because if a group of script kiddies starts organizing themselves and they start going after specific targets for a financial gain or something like that, then comes an organized crime type thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I'm getting the feeling that script kiddies are kind of almost like loose cannons, you know, potentially not knowing the full capabilities of some of the stuff that they're doing. They can do some serious damage without really, maybe even by mistake, just trying stuff out, trying to show off.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can create some serious problems. Yeah. Cool. Next one you mentioned, I think, was hacktivists.
Yes.
So motivated ideologues, you know, following a cause, trying to pursue their own thing. I think I heard quite a bit about this, actually. We hear quite a bit about this on the news, and in, you know, where somebody takes over a website or something and sticks a picture on the front.
Yeah.
So who you know, what are these guys doing then? Are they getting their code from the same places? Are they at a similar level of capability as script kiddies? I mean, what's the story with these guys?
So hacktivists it's a very much varying in skill at this point. They could be script kiddies going after a single target, or they could be very well practiced security individuals who might be, their day job might be hacking, for instance, or their day job might be sysadmin or anything like this. They could be inside the company or outside the company. And if their goal is to make this company look bad or do stuff to this company, so rather than just protesting, they've decided that protesting isn't good enough for them anymore, and they really want to damage this company at this point. So you can do that through hack and leak, where they hack into you and leak a load of internal sensitive data. They could leak your financial documents, like say you've got a quarterly earnings report, they could leak it before, and it would seriously impact the financials of your business. So it depends what their goal is, but it's mainly to damage your business or damage whatever they're targeting.
Yeah. Right, so go in, wreak havoc, you know, use their skills to kind of pursue their own agenda. Have you got what's a good example then of have you got a good example on hand of a successful hacktivist event?
I'll get back to you on the hacktivist.
I see a background checker here. One of the most successful hacktivist groups is Anonymous, who've hacked into mainly government sites, including Syria and the US government. Do you know how? So yeah, what's their most common kind of way of getting in? You know, without getting too technical, because I will get lost quickly. But what's their? You know? Have you got any kind of background on how they would go about doing this sort of stuff? You know, what's their preferred method of attack if they have one?
So the biggest way people are getting into networks is phishing at the moment, whether that's targeted or non-targeted type of attacks. There's misconfigurations on external portals where if they find a bug in a website, for instance, that allows them to execute code or allows them to change websites, they can get in that way. They can get in through other ways. Say you've got a misconfigured router or device on the endpoint, or if they're internal inside your network, they could be someone working for your company who doesn't follow your exact ideals, If they're inside, they can probably gain a higher level access. If they're coming from the outside and they phish you, they might send an email to a user and entice them to download and run something.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the most common method at the moment for actors to get into your network.
Yeah. And I guess those guys are after compromising material, something that they can use to pursue their cause. But actually, it might even just be defacing your website or whatever. You know, they'll do whatever they can to pursue their objectives.
Precisely.
Yeah, and that's about damaging your name, damaging your brand, isn't it? It's trying to do whatever they can to impede your progress as an organization or as a person.
Precisely, yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So organized crime groups, yeah, what's their MO then? Who are these guys?
Organized crime groups are multiple categories and multiple areas. A lot of organized crime is for financial gain. It's for, they want to gain as much money as they possibly can in a short period of time. Now, you've got a couple of sides of organized crime where a group might get together and target a specific company, and they might do a specific thing against that company to earn money. But the better way for them is to go after a lot of targets at once. So an organized crime group might do a campaign against, say, MSPs, for instance. They might go, right, I'm going to try and earn money off MSPs, or I'm going to try and earn money out of financial institutions. So what they'll do is they'll start targeting all these people. They might not be specifically targeting an individual at this point. They might just target everyone in that area. But their goal is normally financial. So they might use ransomware, which is the most common method. They'll go into a system, they'll gain access to it, they'll try and gain as high level access they can, and then they'll deploy ransomware.
So ransomware is locking up your data assets in a way that you can't get access to them, and then they can release it if you pay them the money.
Precisely, yeah.
So what's to stop them? So presumably does that software just sit there once it's been kind of opened up and you've got your data back because you paid your £1 million ransom? Mm-hmm. What's to stop them just going back in and reactivating it next week?
That's the goal. You should never pay a ransom, because if you pay them, you're then funding the organized crime group, and they see it as successful and they will continue to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything residual that's left on your systems then? I mean,
there could be. Yeah. There absolutely could just trigger again.
So even if you pay the money, you know, the ransomware is still there. Your systems are still vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, they might come back to you and say Scout's honor or anything like, yeah, so we're not going to do it again. And then a week later they do it again and go, oh no, what a shame, we're actually criminals.
Yeah, right. So like, you're going to trust the word of somebody who's hacked into your system and locked up a load of your data.
Precisely.
Yeah, sound like a trustworthy bunch. All right. So ransomware. What else would might they be up to then? These
essentially, a lot of the time they're just trying to steal your money. So however they can get access to your money, they'll do. But there is actually a crossover between organized crime groups and some nation states. So there are some organized crime groups or some nation states who are sponsored by nation states. So for instance, it happens a lot of the time so North Korea's, for instance, is a good example of, they are a nation state with a financial goal. So they did a nice hack where they broke into a
Right. So I guess due to the coronavirus and everybody working from home, internet and 4G dropped out then. So anyway, we've overcome these technical problems. We're back in the room. And Tom, we were talking about organized crime groups.
Yes.
And they're after the money. They're after big business. They know what they're doing. They've got resources. And you were saying that in some cases they're backed by nation states.
Yeah, so North Korea has something called the Reconnaissance Bureau, which is widely known as an APT group that goes after financial institutions. And they are...
APT group? Sorry, mate.
So an APT is an advanced persistent threat. This is a threat group that is going to go above and beyond to gain access to your network or gain access to your data. So for instance, the North Korea one was a financial backed. So it could essentially a cybercrime backed by a state. And they stole about $2 billion in currency from financial institutions, cryptocurrency places, and just generally use that to try and then enhance their weapons programs.
Whoa. So these are kind of private organizations that are tasked by a nation state to go and steal money?
So in this case, they are state-sponsored and state-backed. So they probably are part of the North Korean regime.
Oh, okay.
But
Right.
then their targets were financial institutions trying to earn money from their sophistication, essentially.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they are very effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds it. Billions of dollars.
Yeah, about $2 billion, I believe it was last year.
So that's, I mean, that kind of cash that's stealing from banks and stealing from, huge corporate global multinationals.
Precisely, yeah. They're going more after the big money than they are after the little money.
Yeah. So is this where a lot of this code originates then, from these sorts of expert state-sponsored or state-owned, organs of state, putting all these resources into this, they're creating all this code and these techniques and stuff. Is this where a lot of this stuff originates?
So no, not necessarily. So a nation state won't want to release their tools and techniques. So the second you release your tools and techniques online, a lot of security vendors and a lot of the industry will start looking at and breaking apart those tools and techniques, and then finding detection mechanisms for those. Which it's still a cat and mouse game. A new tool gets released, it'll work for a few years before it's almost redundant. But in this case, a nation state or crime organization won't want to release their tools. They may have an entirely custom tool set. So they won't release the source code. They won't release how they're doing it. If they have something called a 0 day, which is an exploit that hasn't been seen before, and normally in these organized crime / nation state areas, these are very sophisticated exploits that you do not want to release, because the more you use it, the more chance you've got of getting burnt. And as soon as it gets released, it'll get burnt. And then you can't really use it again if they patch.
So by burnt, you mean it's out there and available for people to...
Exactly. And then
so as soon as you use it, people know about it.
Yeah. So the vendors that you're using it against, say it's an exploit for Microsoft. If you use that exploit against Microsoft a lot of times, they're probably going to start catching on that there's a lot of crash logs coming in. So like they're going to see instances of things failing and go, what is this? Or if it gets leaked, Microsoft will then be alerted to that fact and then they'll fix it.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, you mentioned 0 day exploits.
Yes.
Now I've heard about these. I think I know what they are, and it's a. So let me try and explain it in my non-tech, completely layman's way of thinking about these things. So I reckon they are bugs in the code of something which haven't been made public by the originator of that application or that piece of software. So they're unknown entry points into some software. Is that right?
That is, yeah, pretty much correct. Yeah, it's just a piece of software, or it's an exploit for something that allows you to gain access to something or do something to a piece of software or code. Yeah, I think you're spot on the money. I think you're spot on the money with that description there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just allows repeated access back to do something into a piece of code.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been seen by the vendor is the key point. So the vendor isn't aware that this is an exploit, or they haven't fixed it yet.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? The 0 day is that they haven't yet discovered that as a kind of potential breach in the defenses of their product.
Yes.
And therefore it's kind of ripe for exploitation. But presumably, so as soon as somebody does exploit it, that's then public, and the code that they've used once they've exploited this is then also out there and available for.
So not always. If you use it, the company might not have decent logging, decent defenses. There might not be enough crash reports going back for the piece of software. So for instance, it's a Linux box. There isn't going to be any crash reports sent out unless it's specifically configured to do that. That means that they can gain repeated access back in and back in until one day that they've overstretched or used it too much, or a security company's seen these things in the wild and going, how are they exploiting that? Then they might start looking deeper into it, reverse engineer it, and then speak to the vendor and get a fix for that vulnerability.
Okay. Yeah. So as soon as a Microsoft patch, so I'm getting messages all the time on my computer about upgrade your operating system, upgrade this app, upgrade this whatever.
Yeah.
So presumably it's a very good idea to keep everything up to date with the latest security patches and the latest versions of applications and operating software.
Yeah, it's a quick win.
Right. So we're talking about nation states, the nation state threat. there's something in my mind. There's some question about how does nation state capability, lots of money and resources and capability put into developing stuff, does that then filter down into the other layers of kind of activity? And have you got any examples of when that might have happened?
Yeah, so a key one that has happened in the last few years was actually something called Eternal Blue, which was part of an Equation Group leak, which essentially a load of hacking tools from a suspected Western intelligence agency got leaked onto the internet. And in a very short space of time, hackers then took those systems and then weaponized them. So a good one for the UK was WannaCry, which attached to the NHS. So WannaCry was a piece of ransomware. So it took an exploit that was going to work against Microsoft Windows. They wrapped it in a worm, so essentially ransomware, that allowed it to operate in itself and self-propagate across a network. And then when it attacked the NHS, so there was a patch released for this. But unfortunately, the NHS didn't have the patch applied to a lot of their systems because they had a lot of legacy systems, a lot of things that just weren't able to be patched. So when this got inside the NHS network, it was very destructive. It attacked a very large portion of the NHS.
Yeah, and what wrapped up data and held it to ransom, or stopped machines working, or all of the above?
Ransomware, all of the above. So it was trying to earn money. But then we look at the opposite side of that, where there was something called Petya, which was designed to look like ransomware, but it wasn't. And that was in 2016. And then 2017, when Eternal Blue got leaked online, there was then something called NotPetya, which attacked Ukraine and Ukraine's infrastructure. That was the opposite side of life, where it's designed to look like ransomware, but it was just destructive. Its sole job was to destroy and deny infrastructure.
Right. Okay. So this was using the same Windows exploit, yeah?
Same Windows exploit, yes. They both took an exploit that was leaked online and in a very short space of time weaponized it and released it onto the internet.
Right. Okay. So that's becoming clear. So for me, then, the bit that I can take away from this is that an exploit can be exploited in a load of different ways. Once an exploit has been made public, you can use that exploit and then feed in whatever software you want. So it might be ransomware, which locks stuff away and says, give me £1 million before I can release this data. Or it might be destructive, or it might be, stealing IP or whatever. So okay. Yeah, that's cool. So that's nation state level capability, stuff that's had the world leading experts in it, focused on it, a lot of money behind it, filtering down and being made available to organized crime groups, to hacktivists, to script kiddies, presumably as well.
Precisely, yeah. To absolutely anyone on the internet.
Yeah. And this stuff is being sold online?
So initially the Equation Group did try to sell it, but there's speculation about whether they're actually trying to earn money or whether they were trying to damage a certain Western intelligence agency's reputation more than anything. Which okay. I don't think they ended up selling it in the end, or if they did, they sold it privately. But what they ended up doing was just releasing it straight online.
Right. Okay. And saying, here you go, create some havoc.
Precisely. And there was a whole mess in 2017 about how it got leaked, why it got leaked, who was behind the leak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts, isn't it? I mean, that makes us all feel a bit vulnerable. I guess we all are vulnerable, right?
Yeah, precisely. So if you've got a working, reliable weaponized zero-day against Microsoft Windows, which are rare and very hard to find, especially in the latest versions of Windows 10, there's pretty much nothing you can do to really stop that. If someone gets inside your network, so in this case, you needed to attack something called SMB, which allows Windows computers to share files between each other. So this was an SMB vulnerability that allowed, if there was an SMB file share, which is default on Windows, on a machine, it could go to that machine every time, or almost every time.
Right. Okay. So then, I guess if it's something that you can do very little about, you've followed the basic cyber hygiene stuff that we all try and do. Keep everything up to date, both your operating system and the applications you're using. Mm-hmm. Don't click on phishing link. You don't click on links in emails that you don't know where they come from. All this kind of basic cyber stuff. Even that, you're still not protected against things like this. So I guess that means we're out of the realms of a technical solution and we're into the realms of, procedural. Protect yourself in a way that rehearse procedures. Work out what you're going to do if you do get
Yeah,
hacked by
precisely.
one of these exploits.
So to paraphrase, I think it was the ex-directors of some US intelligence agencies. He's like, number one, you're in the fight, like whether you think you are or not. Like you
Yeah.
are going to be breached and you are going to be attacked at some point if you operate on the internet. And there has to be a certain level of risk associated with that. So trying to mitigate the risk of a nation state is going to cost a lot of money, like a hell of a lot of money, because you need to get it right every single time.
Yeah.
You need to get it right once. So it's probably best for 99.9% of companies to not worry about the nation state threat and worry about organized crime groups, worry about script kiddies, worry about hacktivists. And there are a lot of good things you can do to mitigate against those. A lot of very, not simple, but a lot of like procedural things you can do in a very safe way for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we come into, should we talk about the basics of cyber hygiene?
Yeah. Let's go into that. It's, I think I practice pretty good cyber hygiene, but I've got no one to verify that for me. Can you kind of enlighten me as to what I should be doing, and I can kind of mentally tick the boxes?
Of course, yeah. So for individuals, it's a lot harder to attack an individual, and it's probably mostly going to be social engineering against you. The harder one is businesses that have a lot of interconnecting parts and a lot of legacy systems, or a lot of IT engineers have been through the years and just introduce things that might open something up inadvertently, or a combination of things might open up a vulnerability.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do is understand your estate. Like, what data have you got? How are you storing that data? Who has access to that data? Like, who should have access to that data? So it's sort of you see the view of what you have and what actually is. Like, how do you test what actually is if you don't know what you have? So if you think you're secure, it's like, okay, tell me about your estate. Tell me about how many people have access to this piece of data. Where is your sensitive data located? Do you have patch management? So essentially, do you install patches to prevent attacks like WannaCry and NotPetya? And another big one is two-factor authentication. So a really good one for individuals. I know personally, one of my email accounts, I inputted a password into a website that got breached, and one of my passwords got leaked. Luckily, it wasn't one for a main email account or anything. So if I went into a website called Have I Been Pwned, I test on my email, my password had been leaked. Even if that was my password for my email account, I have something called two-factor authentication. So when I log into my email account, my phone gets a notification saying, is this you? Yes or no. So it takes more than just a password to be able to log in. So then if someone does try to maliciously log into my account, I can go, no, that's not me. Why has that just happened? And then I can investigate afterwards.
Yeah.
And then you've got things like strong passwords, very, very useful. Just there's a lot of documentation online about how to do strong passwords, and the best way to look at it, like the National Cybersecurity Center has some great advice on strong passwords. You then go changing default passwords. So these are things I see on tests most of the time is patch management, or the systems you are patching most of your systems, but then there's one machine that you've completely forgotten about, or that just runs in the background, not connected to the domain, that when I connect to it, has loads of passwords on it and has sensitive data. And then you've got change the default passwords. So if I go on a router, Cisco, the perfect one is Cisco. I've seen so many routers still with those as their passwords. And then if I get access to your router, I can control your traffic. And then you've got disabling unnecessary communication systems. So on Windows, one of the ways it can talk inside a network is a protocol that goes, rather than calling out to the internet to find out who a domain name is, like so if I go to Google, it then translate that to an IP address, which is just a series of numbers, and then it'll connect to that. If I'm on a network, I can spoof certain things that allow me to then say, a computer asks on its local network and goes, hey guys, does anyone know what this is? And as a computer, I can go, hey, yeah, I'm that guy. And then if a series of things allows you to continue, like something called SMB signing isn't enabled, we can then, without using exploits, we can then exploit your network without ever using a single exploit, just by saying, hey, I'm totally that person that you think I am. Yeah. And then you've got update antivirus. So Windows 10 comes with Windows Defender. It's a good antivirus. It's got something called AMSI, which scans files as they run, or scans PowerShell, recently something called VBScript, and all these other things that use for hacking, and non-malicious purposes as well, I might add. I'm very hacking focused. Update antivirus is a key one. just keeping an updated AV, even on a user level. Another one, user awareness training.
Yeah.
If users don't understand that when they click, when a Word document comes to them, so a favorite of like APT 28 and 29 was you need to get someone to click enable content. Microsoft Word will not automatically run malicious code inside a document without user interaction, unless there's a bug, I should add. So they go into it and they go, right, and then they give a user a reason to entice them to run some malicious code. So there's a button called enable content, which enables the scripts to then run that deploy malware or malicious intent. They go, okay, and then APT 2829 had this thing on it saying this was created in the online version of Microsoft Word. Please click enable content, continue. So they click enable content thinking nothing's wrong, but you've just inadvertently allowed malware into your system. But if a user doesn't understand that that's how it's done, they're never going to know against that. And with a busy work environment, everyone knows the amount of documents flying around companies and the amount of documents coming in, or if you're HR, you might have CVs flying in left, right, and center, and you just want to get the work done. So you might inadvertently do something if you're not aware.
Yeah. So a lot of it's about the people and the kind of procedure that sits behind it. And I guess backing up as well, just from a logical perspective, if you've been subject to some ransomware, it's kind of handy if you've backed up your systems. You've got your data held somewhere, maybe in two places. You've got a disaster recovery site or something.
Yeah, so on the backups as well, there's one thing, I've done this before as well. We had backup systems. One day we realized we'd never tested our backups. We'd never actually done, okay, critical failure, we've lost everything. What do we do now? Luckily, the backup system we had, we'd configured it just to do everything because we hadn't really used this backup. We were just testing it at the time. We wiped everything and went, right, start again. Luckily, the backups worked, but we'd never tested that before. Yeah. If we were in a live scenario and our entire system went down, our backups didn't work, we're rebuilding from scratch and we've lost everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I guess, rehearsing kind of likely scenarios has got, for lots of reasons, not just that, you've got GDPR requirements, you've got Data Protection Act stuff, you've got to report certain things within a certain time period. Otherwise, there's some heavy fines that can be levied.
Precisely.
And I guess moving quickly, once you've been hacked, the quicker the better, presumably.
Yeah, which comes back down to procedural. It's if you have a hack and you have all these backups, it's all well and good. Who do you call to get those backups? Like,
right.
Where are the backups stored? How does an IT admin get access to the backups? What are they going to do to restore those backups? Do you have a toolkit ready, or do they have to build it from scratch? It's kind of like testing your hypothesis. Like, yeah, you've got something, but have you tested that? Which is where the sort of security element comes in. It's sort of a, right, cool, we're going to simulate a scenario where we don't touch your IT systems. We just do a tabletop scenario, paper only, and go, right, okay, your data's just been leaked and posted on Twitter. What do you do? Or you've just been ransomware. And it's this ransomware, what do you do? Who do you call? What do you do like that way? And another big one that I see in companies, the joiners, movers, and leavers procedures. If someone joins the company, they get given an account. They get given passwords, they get given everything, or everything they need to do their job. If they move into a different department, so they've come from HR to IT, or they've come from help desk to IT, which happens a lot, do they still have access to what they used to have access to? Like, what's your procedure for moving them from there to there? Do you just add new roles and responsibilities to them and not take off the last ones? Because I've seen before in companies where I've gone in, people have left the company and I've done something called a password spray. So I've tested one password against all these things. They'd reset the passwords of these people that had left, but not deleted their accounts and permissions. So a common one is welcome one. So if there's any people listening that have welcome one as their password when a joiner joins, change it immediately. Because one of the first things I'm going to do if I'm testing your Active Directory or passwords or something like that is go in and just do welcome one with a capital W, and that's it, and see what happens. And that has success way more than it should in a large enterprise.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that, Tom. It's been really interesting for me. I'm a commercial person, not really a cyber expert, although I'm working for a cyber security company. And so it's really helpful for me to learn some of these details. I think we're probably in the next time we talk, we're going to be talking about cyber hygiene. We're going to go into a bit more about the basics, why they work, how they work and stuff. But that was really interesting conversation about the threats, who's out there, where they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, which should help inform me and anybody else listening what's out there and what they should be protecting as a result and how they should be going about doing it.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, mate. Let's dial in again soon and have another conversation.
Cool. All right.
Great.
See you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you soon. Well, that's it. That's the end of our little conversation. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. It was good fun. You can probably tell we're not used to being recorded either on camera or on audio, so we did our best. Anyway, so if you want to get in touch with the company, details are at the bottom here. Do give us a shout if you want to know anything more. And we'll see you at the next broadcast. Thanks. Bye.